The Zephyrian scout ship drifted silently through the asteroid belt, its sensors scanning the third planet from the yellow star. Commander Vextar studied the readouts with growing amusement, his four eyes blinking in sequence as he processed the data streaming across his neural interface. Fascinating, he clicked to his subordinate, Lieutenant Krish. The inhabitants call themselves humans. They appear to be a primitive species that has barely achieved rudimentary spaceflight. Krish's tentacles writhed with curiosity as she examined her own display. Their technology is crude, Commander. Chemical rockets, basic nuclear fission, and their computers are laughably primitive compared to our quantum consciousness networks. Vextar's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his kind. The Zephyrian Empire had conquered 17 star systems in the past millennium, each victory easier than the last. Their plasma weapons could vaporize entire continents. Their ships moved faster than light, and their warrior castes had been bred for combat across 1,000 generations. Look at this. Vexitar gestured to the holographic display showing Earth's surface. They still fight among themselves with kinetic weapons, metal projectiles fired from chemical explosions. How quaint. The data streams revealed a species that seemed almost comically unprepared for galactic contact. Humans had managed to place a few primitive satellites in orbit and had even sent some of their kind to their planet's single moon. But their achievements paled in comparison to the technological marvels of the Zephyrian Empire. Their military capabilities are particularly amusing, Krish reported, her voice carrying the distinctive harmonics of contempt. They've divided themselves into competing nation-states and waste enormous resources fighting each other over territorial disputes and resource allocation. Vextar studied the tactical analysis his ship's intelligence systems had compiled. Human weapons were crude but showed a certain vicious creativity. They had developed methods to split atoms for destruction, created biological weapons that could devastate populations, and had even engineered chemical compounds that could poison entire regions. Yet all of it seemed primitive compared to Zephyrian technology. Their psychology profiles are equally primitive, the commander observed. They form emotional attachments to concepts like freedom and justice. Such inefficient thinking will make conquest simple. The Zephyrian doctrine was clear and had proven successful across their expanding empire. Identify a species, assess their capabilities, demonstrate overwhelming superiority, and offer subjugation or extinction. Most civilizations chose wisely. Those that didn't were eliminated with clinical efficiency. Shall I begin the standard intimidation protocol? Krish asked, her fingers dancing over the weapon controls. Vextar considered the question while reviewing the data once more. Earth possessed some resources worth harvesting, particularly rare metals and abundant water. The human population could provide adequate labor once properly conditioned. Their planet's location would serve as a useful staging point for further expansion into this spiral arm of the galaxy. Begin with a demonstration, he decided. Target one of their smaller population centers, something visible enough to get their attention, but not significant enough to reduce the labor pool substantially. The ship's targeting systems locked onto a remote military installation in what humans called the Australian continent. It was isolated enough to minimize civilian casualties while still sending a clear message about Zephyrian capabilities. Charging plasma cannons, Krish reported. The demonstration will vaporize approximately 50 square kilometers of surface area. Vexitar watched with satisfaction as his ship's weapon systems hummed to life. This would be another routine conquest, perhaps completed within a few rotations. The humans would witness the destruction of their military base, understand their hopeless position, and submit to Zephyrian authority. Fire when ready, he commanded. The plasma beam lanced down from orbit, striking the Earth's surface with the force of a small star. Where the military base had stood moments before, only a crater of glass remained. The sand fused into a perfectly smooth bowl by temperatures that exceeded the surface of most suns. Excellent precision, Vextar noted with approval. Now broadcast the standard ultimatum. Inform them they have 72 Earth hours to surrender unconditionally, or we will begin systematically destroying their major population centers. As the message was transmitted across all human communication frequencies, Vextar settled back in his command throne. Another world would join the Zephyrian Empire. Another species would serve their purposes. and another victory would be recorded in the annals of their conquest. He had no way of knowing that in military bunkers and government facilities across Earth, human leaders were not discussing surrender terms. Instead, they were doing something the Zephyrian Empire had never encountered in their 1,000 years of conquest. They were getting angry. General Patricia Morrison stood in the Emergency Command Center, buried 300 feet beneath the Pentagon, her steel-gray eyes fixed on the satellite imagery displaying the perfectly circular crater where Pine Gap Station had existed 12 hours ago. The Australian facility had housed some of their most sensitive intelligence operations, and now it was nothing but melted sand. "Status report," she barked to the assembled Joint Chiefs and world leaders connected via secure quantum encryption. President Sarah, Chen's voice crackled through the speakers from her bunker in Colorado. "The alien message has been verified across all platforms. They're demanding unconditional surrender within 60 hours. "Unconditional surrender," repeated General Morrison, her voice carrying a dangerous edge that her subordinates had learned to recognize. "They vaporized Pine Gap and think we'll just roll over." Premier Vladimir Petrov leaned forward on the Moscow connection. "My nuclear forces are at maximum readiness. We can turn their ship into cosmic dust." "Negative," interrupted Dr. Elizabeth Warren from CERN. "Our deep space telescopes have identified at least 30 more ships holding position beyond our sensor range. This scout vessel is just the tip of the spear." Prime Minister James Crawford from London cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should consider their terms. This show of force suggests they possess technology far beyond our capabilities." The silence that followed his suggestion was deafening. General Morrison's jaw tightened as she processed the tactical situation. The aliens had superior technology, unknown numbers, and had just demonstrated they could strike anywhere on Earth without warning. "General," came a new voice from the speakers. "This is Director Martinez from the CIA. We've been monitoring global communications since the attack. You need to see what's happening out there." The main display shifted to show news feeds from around the world. In every major city, crowds were gathering. But these weren't panicked mobs fleeing in terror. These were angry crowds, and they were growing larger by the hour. In New York's Times Square, nearly 1 million people had assembled, chanting in unison. Similar scenes played out in London, Tokyo, Mumbai, São Paulo, and Cairo. The signs they carried weren't pleas for mercy or calls for surrender. They read, "Earth stands united and make them regret it and never kneel." "The polling data is unprecedented," Director Martinez continued. "Approval ratings for military action are running at 97% globally. We're seeing cooperation between historical enemies. Israel and Palestine have opened joint defense planning. India and Pakistan are sharing nuclear protocols. Even North Korea has offered to place their missile systems under unified command." General Morrison felt something she hadn't experienced since her academy days, when impossible odds made her push harder rather than retreat. "What's our realistic assessment of their technological advantage?" Dr. Warren's hologram flickered as she adjusted her display. "Their energy weapons are clearly superior, and their faster-than-light travel gives them strategic mobility we can't match. However, their demonstration attacks suggest they're not interested in total planetary destruction, meaning they want something from us. Resources, labor, territory. That gives us leverage." Defense Secretary Michael Rodriguez joined from his secure location. "Our combined global arsenal includes 47,000 nuclear warheads, 17,000 conventional ballistic missiles, and the most sophisticated cyber warfare capabilities ever developed. If they want this planet intact, they'll have to come down and take it." The president's voice cut through the discussion. "General Morrison, you're being given unified command of all terrestrial defense forces. Every nation has agreed to place their military assets under your authority." Morrison nodded slowly, feeling the weight of 7 billion lives settling on her shoulders. "Understood, Madam President. But I need to be clear about something. These aliens made a critical error in judgment, which is, they assumed we'd respond like a rational, unified species interested in preservation at any cost." Morrison's smile held no warmth. "They're about to learn that humans don't respond well to threats." The tactical display updated as military assets worldwide began repositioning. Submarines moved to new coordinates, aircraft carriers adjusted their formations, and missile silos across 6 continents went to launch-ready status. "Dr. Warren," Morrison called. "How long until their deadline expires?" 58 hours, 14 minutes. Perfect. That gives us time to prepare a response they're not expecting. Morrison turned to her staff. Begin Operation Defiance. I want every piece of space debris, every decommissioned satellite, every experimental weapon system activated and positioned. If they want to play intimidation games, we'll show them what 7 billion angry humans can accomplish when we work together. In orbit above Earth, Commander Vextar was reviewing the human response with growing confusion. His sensors detected massive military mobilization, but instead of surrender preparations, the humans appeared to be positioning for combat. Commander, Krish reported, we're detecting unusual activity in their orbital space. They're moving debris and inactive satellites into new configurations. Vextar's mandibles clicked with amusement. Primitive orbital defenses, charming, but ineffective against our technology. He had no idea that in hidden facilities across Earth, human engineers were working with desperate creativity to modify every piece of hardware they could find. Nuclear weapons were being retrofitted with experimental guidance systems. Satellites were being converted into kinetic kill vehicles. Even the International Space Station was being quietly evacuated and prepared for one final mission. The humans had 56 hours to prepare for war. Captain Hassan al-Rashid guided his modified cargo freighter through the debris field that had once been the outer ring of Earth's defensive satellites. His ship, the Damascus Steel, had been hastily converted from a civilian vessel into something the military analysts were calling a kinetic delivery platform. Strapped to its hull were 3 decommissioned nuclear submarines, their missile tubes packed with specially designed penetrator rounds. Control, this is Steel Leader, Hassan transmitted on the encrypted channel. Package delivery approaching optimal position. 800 kilometers below, General Morrison monitored the operation from her command center. The aliens had rejected their counter-proposal for negotiated withdrawal, responding instead by destroying half of Earth's communications satellites. The message was clear: surrender or face systematic destruction. The human response was equally clear, though the aliens hadn't grasped its significance yet. Steel Leader, you are go for delivery, Morrison transmitted. Godspeed. Hassan's crew had volunteered for this mission knowing the odds. They were essentially flying a suicide run against a technologically superior enemy. But as Hassan looked at the pictures taped to his console, his daughter's graduation photo, his son's wedding, his grandchildren's drawings, he felt no fear, only determination. Initiating release sequence, Hassan announced to his crew. Remember, we're not trying to win. We're trying to teach them a lesson. The Damascus Steel rotated on its axis and fired its improvised payload toward the Zephyrian scout ship. The penetrator rounds weren't designed to damage the alien vessel. They couldn't pierce its advanced shielding. But they served a different purpose entirely. Commander Vexitar watched the primitive projectiles approach with mild interest. Kinetic weapons, he observed to Krish, admirably determined but ultimately futile. The rounds struck his ship's shields and disintegrated harmlessly, exactly as the humans had calculated. But hidden within each projectile was something the Zephyrians hadn't detected, something their sensors classified as harmless debris. Microscopic devices, no larger than grains of sand, each containing a self-replicating program designed by humanity's best programmers working in desperate collaboration. The devices attached themselves to the ship's hull and began the patient work of infiltrating Zephyrian computer systems. Scan for damage, Vextar ordered, though he expected none. All systems nominal, Commander, Krish reported. Their weapons were completely ineffective. 3,000 kilometers away, the Damascus Steel erupted in a ball of plasma as the Zephyrian return fire found its mark. Hassan and his crew died instantly, but their sacrifice had accomplished its mission. The microscopic infiltrators were now spreading through the alien ship's networks like a digital virus. In his command bunker, Dr. Zhang Wei monitored the progress of Operation Trojan Horse on his quantum computer. The devices were designed to remain dormant for exactly 72 hours, giving the aliens time to become confident in their security. Infiltration successful, he reported to General Morrison. The payload is in place, Morrison nodded grimly. Begin Phase 2. Across Earth's surface, mobile missile platforms emerged from hidden silos. These weren't the massive intercontinental ballistic missiles the aliens expected. Instead, they were smaller, faster vehicles designed for a different kind of warfare. In the Sahara Desert, Colonel Maria Santos counted down the launch sequence for her squadron of modified rockets. Each missile carried a payload of metallic chaff and reflective particles, designed to create false signatures that would confuse alien sensors. "Launch authorization confirmed," she announced, deploying decoy cloud in 3, 2, 1. Hundreds of missiles streaked into the atmosphere, spreading clouds of reflective material that created thousands of false targets on Zephyrian sensors. To their advanced detection systems, it appeared that Earth had suddenly launched a massive coordinated strike. "Commander," Krish's voice carried the first note of alarm Vexitar had heard from his lieutenant. "We're detecting massive launch activity across the planet's surface. Thousands of inbound projectiles." Vexitar studied the display with growing concern. The humans had somehow concealed the true extent of their military capabilities. "Begin evasive maneuvers and prepare defensive fire." The Zephyrian ship's weapons blazed as they tried to intercept the apparent missile swarm, but the chaff clouds made targeting impossible. For every real missile they destroyed, a dozen false signatures appeared to take its place. In a bunker beneath Geneva, Dr. Sarah Kim watched the alien response with satisfaction. "They're burning through their energy reserves trying to shoot down ghosts," she reported. "Tactical assessment shows a 40% reduction in their defensive capability. But the real surprise was yet to come. As the chaff clouds dispersed and the aliens began to realize they'd been tricked, the dormant programs in their computer systems activated. The infiltrator devices didn't try to take control of Zephyrian systems. That would have been impossible given their technological superiority. Instead, they did something simpler and far more effective. They began transmitting. Every piece of data flowing through the alien ship's networks was suddenly being broadcast on frequencies the humans could monitor. Navigation codes, weapon specifications, tactical assessments, even personal communications between crew members were streaming directly to Earth's intelligence agencies. "My God," whispered Director Martinez as the translated data flooded his screens. "We're inside their entire command structure." The intelligence windfall was beyond anything they had hoped for. The humans now knew the locations of the other Zephyrian ships, their technological limitations, their mission parameters, and most importantly, their weaknesses. Commander Vexitar was beginning to suspect that he had underestimated these humans, but he still believed their technological advantage was insurmountable. He had no idea that every order he gave, every tactical decision he made, was being monitored by 7 billion increasingly angry humans who were proving far more resourceful than any species the Zephyrian Empire had previously encountered. The real war was about to begin. Commander Vexitar stared at his tactical display in growing disbelief. The human deadline had expired 6 hours ago, and instead of the systematic orbital bombardment he had planned, his ship was now engaged in what could only be described as the most frustrating military operation of his career. "Status report," he demanded, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly in a pattern that indicated extreme agitation among his species. Lieutenant Krish manipulated her control interface with increasingly frantic tentacle movements. "Commander, we've lost contact with 3 orbital surveillance drones. Our long-range communications array is experiencing systematic interference, and our navigation systems keep receiving false positional data." The humans had not surrendered. Instead, they had done something unprecedented in Zephyrian military experience. They had turned their technological disadvantage into a strategic advantage. Dr. Elizabeth Warren stood in the particle accelerator facility at CERN, watching as her team made final adjustments to the most ambitious experiment in human history. They had converted the Large Hadron Collider into a massive electromagnetic pulse generator, capable of creating directed energy bursts that could disrupt alien technology from the planet's surface. "Power levels at maximum," reported Dr. Yamamoto from the control station. "Target lock confirmed on the primary alien vessel." "Fire," Warren ordered. The pulse that erupted from the facility was invisible to human eyes but devastating to Zephyrian electronics. It washed over their ship like a digital tsunami, temporarily blinding their sensors and disrupting their shield harmonics. In that crucial 30-second window of vulnerability, the next phase of humanity's defense plan activated. Major Tom Bradley piloted his stealth fighter through the upper atmosphere, his aircraft invisibly coated with radar-absorbing materials that the aliens' sensors couldn't detect. Strapped beneath his wings were two experimental weapons that represented humanity's most desperate innovation. "Control, this is Ghost Rider," he transmitted. "Beginning attack run." The weapons weren't designed to destroy the alien ship. Human engineers had quickly realized that was impossible with conventional technology. Instead, they had created something far more insidious: molecular disassembly devices that could break down the exotic materials comprising alien hull plating. Bradley's first missile struck the Zephyrian ship just as their shields flickered back online. The device didn't explode. Instead, it attached itself to the hull and began the patient work of converting alien metal into its component atoms. "What was that?" Vextar demanded as his damage control teams reported a strange corrosion spreading across their starboard hull. "Unknown weapon impact, Commander," Krish replied, her voice carrying the distinctive harmonics of fear. "The affected area is experiencing molecular destabilization." Before Vextar could respond, Bradley's second missile found its target. This one contained something even more dangerous: a self-replicating nanomachine swarm programmed with one simple directive: find alien technology and convert it into more nanomachines. In the research facility beneath Tokyo, Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura monitored the progress of his creation with grim satisfaction. "Nanomachine deployment successful," he reported to General Morrison. "Estimated time to critical system damage, 47 minutes. But the humans weren't finished. As the Zephyrian crew struggled to contain the spreading damage to their ship, they failed to notice the subtle changes occurring in Earth's orbital space around them. Captain Liu, we commanded the hastily assembled fleet of converted cargo vessels that had taken position throughout the debris field. Each ship was packed with compressed gas canisters and industrial chemicals that had been repurposed for military use. All ships, this is Fleet Command," Liu transmitted. "Execute Operation Atmosphere." The cargo ships began venting their contents into space, creating a massive cloud of reflective particles and reactive gases around the alien vessel. Within minutes, the Zephyrian ship was surrounded by an artificial atmosphere that interfered with their sensors and created false targeting solutions. "Commander," Krish reported with growing panic, "our tactical systems are completely compromised. We cannot achieve target lock on any human assets." Vexitar's mandibles clicked rapidly as he processed this information. The humans had somehow managed to blind his ship, damage its hull, and create a localized environment that neutralized their technological advantages. This was not how conquests were supposed to proceed. "Signal the fleet," he ordered. "Request immediate tactical support." But when Krish attempted to contact the other Zephyrian vessels, she discovered that the humans had been busy there as well. The infiltrator programs they had introduced to his ship's computer systems had been quietly transmitting false coordinates to the rest of the fleet. The 30 ships that were supposed to be holding position just beyond Earth's sensor range were now scattered across a volume of space, spanning several light years, each one believing they were in the correct position while their navigation systems fed them carefully crafted lies. In her command center, General Morrison allowed herself a small smile as she reviewed the tactical situation. "Report from all fronts." "Alien communications disrupted," reported Director Martinez. "Their fleet is scattered and unable to coordinate. Primary target vessel has lost approximately 30% of hull integrity," added Dr. Nakamura. "Nanomachine replication is proceeding ahead of schedule. Electromagnetic interference is maintaining sensor blackout," confirmed Dr. Warren from CERNTM. "They're flying blind," Morrison nodded slowly. The plan was working, but she knew this was only the beginning. The aliens still possessed superior firepower, and once they realized the extent of human capabilities, they would likely resort to more desperate measures. "All units, prepare for Phase 4, she ordered. "It's time to show them what happens when they threaten human children." Aboard the damaged Zephyrian ship, Commander Vextar was beginning to understand that he had made a catastrophic error in judgment. These humans weren't just primitive, they were dangerously creative. They had taken every disadvantage and turned it into a weapon. But what truly terrified him was the growing realization that everything they had done so far had been defensive. The humans hadn't even begun to attack yet. Commander Vextar stared at his tactical display in growing disbelief. The human deadline had expired 6 hours ago, and instead of the systematic orbital bombardment he had planned, His ship was now engaged in what could only be described as the most frustrating military operation of his career. "Status report," he demanded, his four eyes blinking rapidly in a pattern that indicated extreme agitation among his species. Lieutenant Krish manipulated her control interface with increasingly frantic tentacle movements. "Commander, we've lost contact with 3 orbital surveillance drones. Our long-range communications array is experiencing systematic interference, and our navigation systems keep receiving false positional data." The humans had not surrendered. Instead, they had done something unprecedented in Zephyrian military experience. They had turned their technological disadvantage into a strategic advantage. "Dr. Elizabeth?" Warren stood in the particle accelerator facility at CERN, watching as her team made final adjustments to the most ambitious experiment in human history. They had converted the Large Hadron Collider into a massive electromagnetic pulse generator, capable of creating directed energy bursts that could disrupt alien technology from the planet's surface. "Power levels at maximum," reported Dr. Yamamoto from the control station. "Target lock confirmed on the primary alien vessel." "Fire," Warren ordered. The pulse that erupted from the facility was invisible to human eyes, but devastating to Zephyrian electronics. It washed over their ship like a digital tsunami, temporarily blinding their sensors and disrupting their shield harmonics. In that crucial 30-second window of vulnerability, the next phase of humanity's defense plan activated. Major Tom Bradley piloted his stealth fighter through the upper atmosphere, his aircraft invisibly coated with radar-absorbing materials that the alien sensors couldn't detect. Strapped beneath his wings were 2 experimental weapons that represented humanity's most desperate innovation. "Control, this is Ghost Rider," he transmitted. "Beginning attack run." The weapons weren't designed to destroy the alien ship. Human engineers had quickly realized that was impossible with conventional technology. Instead, they had created something far more insidious: molecular disassembly devices that could break down the exotic materials comprising alien hull plating. Bradley's first missile struck the Zephyrian ship just as their shields flickered back online. The device didn't explode. Instead, it attached itself to the hull and began the patient work of converting alien metal into its component atoms. "What was that?" Vextar demanded as his damage control teams reported a strange corrosion spreading across their starboard hull. "Unknown weapon impact." "Commander," Krish replied, her voice carrying the distinctive harmonics of fear. "The affected area is experiencing molecular destabilization." Before Vexitar could respond, Bradley's second missile found its target. This one contained something even more dangerous: a self-replicating nanomachine swarm programmed with one simple directive: find alien technology and convert it into more nanomachines. In the research facility beneath Tokyo, Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura monitored the progress of his creation with grim satisfaction. "Nanomachine deployment successful," he reported to General Morrison. "Estimated time to critical system damage 47 minutes, but the humans weren't finished." As the Zephyrian crew struggled to contain the spreading damage to their ship, they failed to notice the subtle changes occurring in Earth's orbital space around them. Captain Liu Wei commanded the hastily assembled fleet of converted cargo vessels that had taken position throughout the debris field. Each ship was packed with compressed gas canisters and industrial chemicals that had been repurposed for military use. "All ships, this is Fleet Command," Liu transmitted. "Execute Operation Atmosphere." The cargo ships began venting their contents into space, creating a massive cloud of reflective particles and reactive gases around the alien vessel. Within minutes, the Zephyrian ship was surrounded by an artificial atmosphere that interfered with their sensors and created false targeting solutions. "Commander," Krish reported with growing panic, "our tactical systems are completely compromised. We cannot achieve target lock on any human assets." Vextar's mandibles clicked rapidly as he processed this information. The humans had somehow managed to blind his ship, damage its hull, and create a localized environment that neutralized their technological advantages. This was not how conquests were supposed to proceed. "Signal the fleet," he ordered. "Request immediate tactical support." But when Krish attempted to contact the other Zephyrian vessels, she discovered that the humans had been busy there as well. The infiltrator programs they had introduced to his ships' computer systems had been quietly transmitting false coordinates to the rest of the fleet, the 30 ships that were supposed to be holding position just beyond Earth's Sensor range were now scattered across a volume of space, spanning several light years, each one believing they were in the correct position, while their navigation systems fed them carefully crafted lies. In her command center, General Morrison allowed herself a small smile as she reviewed the tactical situation. "Report from all fronts. Alien communications disrupted," reported Director Martinez. "Their fleet is scattered and unable to coordinate. Primary target vessel has lost approximately 30% of hull integrity," added Dr. Nakamura. "Nanomachine replication is proceeding ahead of schedule. Electromagnetic interference is maintaining sensor blah." The emergency meeting in the Zephyrian High Command vessel took place across a secure quantum link, with Fleet Admiral Thoraxel connecting from the flagship Dominion's Edge while his scattered fleet commanders participated from their various positions throughout local space. "Explain to me." Admiral Thoraxel's voice carried the dangerous theme that preceded executions. "How a single primitive species has managed to neutralize our advanced scout and scatter my entire fleet across 3 star systems." Commander Vextar, his image flickering due to communication interference, struggled to maintain composure as he delivered his report. His ship was now operating at less than 40% capacity, with sections of the hull continuing to dissolve under the relentless assault of human nanomachines. "Admiral, we have severely underestimated their capabilities," Vextar admitted. "They have demonstrated tactical innovation beyond anything in our combat databases." "Innovation?" Admiral Thoraxel's compound eyes blazed with fury. "They're using chemical rockets and nuclear fission. How could such primitives pose any threat to Zephyrian technology?" Captain Rexna, commanding the destroyer Swift Judgment, interrupted the transmission. "Admiral, with respect, they're not fighting like primitives. My navigation systems have been compromised for 18 hours. According to my instruments, I'm simultaneously in 7 different locations. My targeting computers show the same human fleet in 12 different positions," added Captain Zilla from the heavy cruiser Final Authority. "Their electronic warfare capabilities are more sophisticated than anything we've encountered." Admiral Thoraxel processed this information while reviewing the tactical data streaming from Earth's vicinity. What he saw defied conventional military logic. The humans had somehow managed to turn their entire planet into a single massive weapons platform. Dr. Chen Li stood in the converted subway tunnel beneath Beijing, watching as her team made final preparations for humanity's most audacious gambit yet. The tunnel had been secretly modified over the past week, transformed into a linear particle accelerator that stretched for nearly 50 kilometers beneath the city. "Charging sequence initiated," she announced into her headset. "Operation Ragnarok is go for execution." General Morrison's voice crackled through the speakers. "Dr. Chen, confirm your target parameters." "We're locked onto the alien flagship's position," Chen replied, though she knew the targeting solution was largely theoretical. "If our calculations are correct, this pulse should disable their primary systems." The device Chen's team had constructed was insane by any rational engineering standard. They had essentially turned an entire subway system into a massive railgun, capable of accelerating a projectile to nearly 10% of light speed. The projectile itself was a marvel of desperate innovation. A crystalline matrix containing compressed antimatter, surrounded by a shell of programmable matter that would reshape itself during flight. "Firing in 10 seconds, Chen announced. 50 kilometers above her position, Admiral Thoraxel was reviewing deployment options for a planetary bombardment when his ship's sensors detected ACOUT, confirmed Dr. Warren from CERN. "They're flying blind." Morrison nodded slowly. The plan was working, but she knew this was only the beginning. The aliens still possessed superior firepower, and once they realized the extent of human capabilities, they would likely resort to more desperate measures. "All units, prepare for Phase 4, she ordered. "It's time to show them what happens when they threaten human children." Aboard the damaged Zephyrian ship, Commander Vextar was beginning to understand that he had made a catastrophic error in judgment. These humans weren't just primitive, they were dangerously creative. They had taken every disadvantage and turned it into a weapon. But what truly terrified him was the growing realization that everything they had done so far had been defensive. The humans hadn't even begun to attack yet. Supreme Overlord Krexthal's confidence began to waver as he processed the implications. If the humans truly possessed such advanced technology, Why had they allowed his scout fleet to operate freely for so long? Unless it's a trap, he realized with growing alarm. They've been studying our capabilities while concealing their own. The truth was both simpler and more terrifying than Krexthul could imagine. The humans hadn't developed miraculous technology in a matter of days. Instead, they had done something the Zephyrian Empire had never encountered. They had turned deception itself into a weapon of war. Dr. Elena Vasquez monitored the alien response from her position in the deep space tracking facility in Chile. They're holding position at maximum sensor range, she reported. No indication of immediate attack. Good, replied General Morrison. That gives us time to implement the final phase. While the Zephyrian dreadnought hesitated at the edge of the solar system, human engineers were putting the finishing touches on their most desperate gambit yet. Every functioning spacecraft on Earth, from the International Space Station to commercial satellites to experimental military prototypes, had been modified for one final mission. Captain Lisa Chen sat in the pilot's seat of the modified cargo shuttle Defiance, her hands steady on the controls despite the magnitude of what they were attempting. Strapped to her ship's hull were the compressed remains of every nuclear weapon humanity had managed to gather in 3 days of frantic preparation. This is Defiance, leader, she transmitted, to the assembled fleet of converted civilian spacecraft. All units confirm readiness for Operation Lightbringer. The response came from nearly 200 vessels, each one crewed by volunteers who understood they were unlikely to survive the next hour. They were miners, cargo pilots, research technicians, and maintenance workers who had been hastily trained for the most important mission in human history. Lightbringer formation. You are cleared for final approach, came General Morrison's voice from Earth. Remember, you're not trying to destroy their ship. You're trying to deliver a message. The human fleet began its approach toward the massive alien dreadnought, their ship small and fragile compared to the titanic vessel that awaited them. But hidden within their seemingly primitive spacecraft was something the Zephyrians had failed to understand about human nature. As the Defiance and her sister ships closed the distance, Captain Chen activated the final surprise the humans had prepared. Every nuclear weapon in their arsenal had been modified with the same nanomachine technology they had used against the scout fleet. But these devices carried a different payload. Instead of dismantling alien technology, they were programmed to broadcast a single message on every frequency the Zephyrians used for communication. The message was simple, recorded in the voice of a child from every nation on Earth, translated into the alien language using data gathered from their computer infiltration. We are human, the voices said in unison. We do not kneel. We do not surrender. We do not forget. If you destroy our world, we will find yours. If you harm our children, we will hunt you across the galaxy. We offer you one chance to leave in peace. Choose wisely. As the nanomachines spread the message throughout the Zephyrian fleet, Supreme Overlord Krexthul realized that he was facing something unprecedented in the Empire's history. These humans weren't just defending their planet. They were promising to become the Zephyrian Empire's greatest nightmare if the conflict continued. The choice was no longer between conquest and withdrawal. It was between tactical retreat and the possible destruction of everything the Zephyrians had built over a millennium of expansion. Krexthul received Admiral Thoraxel's withdrawal request while presiding over the Zephyrian High Council from his throne ship, the massive dreadnought Eternal Dominion. The ship was the size of a small moon, bristling with weapons that could sterilize entire solar systems, and it represented the accumulated military might of a 1,000-year empire. Withdrawal? Krexthul's voice resonated through the council chamber with the force of controlled rage. From a single primitive world? The assembled fleet commanders and military advisors shifted uncomfortably in their biomechanical restraints. In the Empire's history, no Zephyrian force had ever requested tactical withdrawal from a technologically inferior species. Admiral Thoraxel's damaged transmission flickered on the main display, his image distorted by the electromagnetic interference surrounding Earth. Supreme Overlord, these humans have demonstrated capabilities that do not match our intelligence assessments. They have weaponized their entire planetary system. Impossible, declared General Vothak, the Empire's chief military strategist. Our sensor data confirmed they possess only primitive chemical weapons and basic nuclear technology. Our sensor data was wrong, Thoraxel replied grimly. They have somehow converted civilian infrastructure into military assets. Their subway systems fire antimatter projectiles. Their communication satellites have become autonomous weapons platforms. Even their space debris has been weaponized. Krexthol's 6 arms gestured dismissively. Then we will demonstrate why the Zephyrian Empire has never been defeated. Prepare the Eternal Dominion for immediate departure to the human system. 3 days later, the massive dreadnought dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. Its presence immediately detected by the network of modified human sensors that now monitored the entire region. Dr. Sarah Kim, now serving as Earth's Chief Intelligence Coordinator, studied the sensor readings with a mixture of awe and determination. "It's enormous," she reported to General Morrison. "Mass equivalent to roughly 3 billion tons. Energy signature consistent with planet-killing capability." General Morrison nodded grimly as she reviewed the tactical assessment. The alien dreadnought represented a level of technology that humanity couldn't hope to match in direct combat. But 3 days of continuous warfare had taught her something important about human nature. When faced with impossible odds, humans didn't surrender. They got creative. "Deploy." "Operation Mirror," she ordered. "Lieutenant." Colonel James Washington watched from his position aboard the hot, converted space station New Frontier as the most ambitious deception operation in human history began to unfold. Over the past 72 hours, every functioning satellite, space probe, and orbital platform had been repositioned according to carefully calculated coordinates. "All units report ready," Washington announced, initiating holographic projection sequence. The effect was spectacular. Using a combination of reflective surfaces, laser arrays, and electromagnetic field manipulation, the humans created the illusion that Earth was protected by a massive fleet of warships. The projections were crude by Zephyrian standards, but at interplanetary distances, they were convincing enough to give the aliens pause. Supreme Overlord Krexthol studied the tactical display with growing suspicion. "Explain to me how a primitive species acquired a battle fleet of this magnitude in less than a week." His tactical officers exchanged uncertain glances. The sensor readings showed nearly 1,000 vessels arranged in defensive formations around Earth, each one broadcasting energy signatures consistent with advanced military technology. "Perhaps they were concealing their true capabilities," suggested Admiral Yethra. "Some species have been known to maintain hidden fleets, but Krexthol had not conquered 17 star systems by accepting surface appearances." "Conduct detailed scans," he ordered. "I want to know the composition and armament of every vessel in that fleet." As the Eternal Dominion's powerful sensors focused on the human defensive formations, Dr. Kim's team activated the second phase of their deception. Hidden transmitters began broadcasting, false signatures that mimicked the energy patterns of advanced weapons systems. The result was a sensor reading that suggested Earth was defended by technology that matched or exceeded Zephyrian capabilities, weapons that could manipulate gravity, shields that operated outside conventional physics, and power sources that defied known science. "This is impossible," muttered the Dreadnought's chief scientist as he reviewed the data. "These readings suggest the humans have achieved technological breakthroughs that our empire has been researching for millennia." Supreme Overlord Krexthol stood in the command center of the Eternal Dominion, watching as the human message spread through his fleet's communication networks like a digital plague. The voices of human children speaking in perfect Zephyrian dialect created an effect that no amount of military training had prepared his crews to handle. "How do they know our language?" demanded Admiral Yethra, her usual composure shattered by the implications. "They've been inside our systems from the beginning," Krexthol replied, his voice heavy with the weight of realization. "Every tactical decision, every communication, every strategic assessment. They've been watching us like we were insects under observation." The bridge fell silent as the crew processed this information. The Zephyrian Empire had built its expansion on technological superiority and military precision. The idea that a primitive species had been manipulating their actions was beyond their comprehension. General Vothak accessed his tactical displays with trembling appendages. "Supreme Overlord, our intelligence networks are reporting similar infiltrations across 17 conquered systems. If the humans can replicate this capability..." The sentence hung unfinished in the air because its completion was too terrible to voice. "If humanity could penetrate Zephyrian security systems at will, Then every world the Empire had conquered, every strategic advantage they possessed, every secret weapon in their arsenal was potentially compromised. Dr. Jennifer Walsh sat in her laboratory beneath the CERN facility, monitoring the alien response with grim satisfaction. The infiltrator programs had exceeded every expectation, not only gathering intelligence but also providing humanity with something far more valuable: leverage. "They're beginning to understand," she reported to General Morrison. "Quantum entanglement signatures suggest they're attempting to purge their computer systems, but our programs are designed to adapt faster than their countermeasures." Morrison nodded as she reviewed the global status reports. Every major population center on Earth was now connected to a unified defense network. What had started as a desperate attempt to survive alien contact had evolved into something unprecedented: the entire human species functioning as a single military organism. "Deploy the final revelation," Morrison ordered across the solar system. Hidden transmitters that had been placed during humanity's frantic preparation began broadcasting on Zephyrian command frequencies. The data they transmitted was the most devastating weapon humanity had developed. Complete tactical assessments of every Zephyrian military installation, detailed schematics of their technology, and precise locations of their conquered worlds. Supreme Overlord Krexthal watched in growing horror as his empire's most closely guarded secrets appeared on his display screens. Defensive positions that had taken centuries to establish were laid bare. Technological innovations that had required millennia to develop were completely analyzed. Strategic resources that provided the foundation of Zephyrian power were cataloged with terrifying precision. "They know everything," whispered Admiral Thoraxel, his transmission crackling with interference as his damaged fleet limped toward the rendezvous point. "Our bases, our supply lines, our research facilities, they have intelligence on assets we haven't even deployed yet." The implication struck the Zephyrian leadership like a physical blow. In less than a week, humanity had gone from being a primitive species marked for conquest to possessing the capability to destroy the Zephyrian Empire from within. "How is this possible?" Krexthal demanded, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Dr. Zhang Wei provided the explanation from his facility in Beijing, his voice broadcast directly into the alien command center through their compromised communication systems. "You assumed we were primitive because our technology is different from yours. You failed to understand that humans excel at using any available tool to achieve their objectives." The translation systems rendered his words in perfect Zephyrian, but the meaning transcended language barriers. These humans had taken everyday civilian technology and converted it into military assets. They had turned their entire planetary infrastructure into a weapons platform. They had transformed their supposed technological disadvantage into a strategic advantage. "You have a choice," Dr. Zhang continued, his voice now being heard throughout the Zephyrian fleet. "Withdraw from our system immediately, or discover what 7 billion angry humans can accomplish when we decide to take our defense efforts to your home worlds." The threat was not idle. Hidden within the data the humans had transmitted were detailed analysis of Zephyrian faster-than-light travel, complete with modifications that would allow human technology to achieve interstellar flight. They had reverse-engineered alien propulsion systems and were already building prototypes. Captain Rodriguez watched from his facility in the Atacama Desert as the first human starship prototype powered up its experimental drive systems. The vessel was crude compared to Zephyrian technology, built from converted spacecraft and powered by modified nuclear reactors, but it was functional. "FTL test successful," he reported. "Estimated travel time to the nearest Zephyrian system, 6 months." The message was clear. Humanity might be technologically inferior, but they were no longer confined to Earth. If the Zephyrians continued their aggression, they would face a species that had already demonstrated a frightening capacity for tactical innovation and was now capable of bringing that creativity to their doorstep. Supreme Overlord Krexthal made the hardest decision of his military career. "Signal fleet withdrawal," he ordered, his voice carrying the weight of defeat. "All units are to cease offensive operations and retreat to minimum safe distance." "Sir?" Admiral Yethra questioned, unable to believe what she was hearing. "We have encountered a species that fights wars unlike anything in our experience," Krexthal explained, his words heavy with reluctant respect. "They have turned every disadvantage into a weapon. every weakness into a strength. Continued engagement risks not just this fleet, but the entire empire. As the massive Zephyrian dreadnought began its retreat from Earth's solar system, General Morrison allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. Humanity had faced extinction and responded not with surrender, but with the kind of determined creativity that had carried their species from caves to the stars. The aliens had learned a lesson that would echo through the galaxy for generations to come. When you threaten humanity, you don't just face human military might. You face human ingenuity, human determination, and human refusal to accept defeat. The Zephyrian Empire had discovered why. In a universe full of advanced civilizations, it was the primitive humans who were destined to inherit the stars.